Paranormal Network invites you to accompany us on a new journey where we'll take you inside some of the most compelling and mysterious close encounters ever recorded. We'll examine the evidence, we'll listen to the witnesses, we'll consider every possibility. Join us as we investigate history's most infamous UFO incidents. What would you do? It's perhaps the easiest question to ask yourself when considering coming face to face with something unexplainable. We'd like to think we'd be open to a fantastical experience, that we'd open our eyes even wider to soak in the shocking phenomena at hand. But really think about it. Would you stand your ground, or would you run in fear? Would your curiosity win out, or would terror overwhelm it? There's really no telling how you'd react if the unthinkable happened before you. Maybe you never want to find out. Perhaps it would depend on what you're seeing in this theoretical situation. If it were a UFO in the sky, chances are you'd stare at it, dumbstruck, for as long as humanly possible. If it were a ghost, maybe you'd shield your face in horror, but what if it was a man? Not a normal man, but a strangely eerie man. A man whose grin sends shivers down your spine. A man whose intentions are cloaked in mystery. Would you run from this man, or would you have no choice but to engage with him? Would you follow him into the night? We're going to look at a couple of very different responses to our questions, and you'll have a moment or two to ask yourself, what would I do if I met Indrid Cold, the Grinning Man? Let me take this opportunity to thank you all for watching UFO Incidents and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. Now, back to the show. There were two boys out for a walk. It was a little late, almost 10. Perhaps they should have been in bed by now. Perhaps they would later wish they had been. Their names were Jimmy Anchitis and Martin Munoff. It was a dark street underneath the New Jersey Turnpike in the town of Elizabeth. "Who's that guy standing behind you?" Jimmy asked Martin. Martin turned and saw, parallel to where they were walking, there was a very large fence, and behind the fence stood a man. The man was just standing there, grinning at them. This was no stranded motorist. That much seemed obvious to them. He was very tall, with beady eyes set wide apart in the face, with a dark complexion. The boys would later claim that they couldn't tell if the grinning man had a nose or ears or even hair. He wore what appeared to be a greenish suit that seemed to reflect the streetlights above. Jimmy would later say, "He was the strangest guy we ever saw. He was standing behind that fence. I don't know how he got there. He was the biggest man I ever saw." The boys, getting to answer that age-old question of what would you do in this situation, decided to flee the scene. Maybe they were wise beyond their years. The encounter the boys had with the Grinning Man wasn't the only odd occurrence in the state that night. About 30 miles away in the town of Wanacue, no less than 5 people reported seeing UFOs in the sky. 3 of those people were policemen. A patrolman claimed he saw a bright light hovering over the Wanacue Reservoir, and another patrolman and a sergeant reported seeing a bright object flying over the reservoir only to dip below the dam. The sergeant would later say that the light was brilliantly white. It lit up the whole area for 300 yards. In fact, it blinded him when he got out of his patrol car to look at it, and he couldn't see for about 25 minutes afterwards. You might think, what could these sightings have to do with the Grinning Man? You might even think it's just a strange coincidence. After our next encounter, you might think again. Less than a month after the strange sightings that October night in New Jersey, a salesman named Woody Derenberger was driving home on Interstate 77 in his home state of West Virginia, something he had done countless nights before. But this was not to be an ordinary night for Mr. Derenberger. At approximately 7:30 p.m., a flying object landed some yards ahead of Woody's car, giving him time to slow down lest he crash into it. The charcoal-colored object, which was approximately 30 to 35 feet long, glistened in the headlights of Woody's car. A door opened on the side of the object, and out walked a man. The vehicle the man had come in then shot straight into the sky, hovering about 70 feet off the earth, and the following interaction occurred. The man walked calmly to the passenger side door of Woody's car, and he politely asked Woody to roll down the window. The terrified driver did as he was instructed. The man asked Woody why he was frightened.
Why so serious?
We mean you no harm, the man said. Well, not said. He spoke, but his lips didn't move. Woody and the man were talking telepathically. The man said he was called Cold. Cold was curious about the distant lights coming from the city of Parkersburg, and when he was told it was a city, he responded that that is where he lived. Such a place was called a gathering. The polite man was wearing a top coat, which was zippered down in the front. It was shiny, glossy, perhaps not unlike the coat that seemed to reflect the streetlights that the two young boys in New Jersey saw. Unlike that man, this one clearly had hair and ears and a nose. Woody said he didn't look any different from any other man you might meet on the street. A nice-looking man in his mid-30s, neat and tidy, very friendly, always smiling. Noting Woody's fear, the man once again assured him that there was nothing to be afraid of. "We are the same as you," he said. "We eat,
we breathe, we sleep, we bleed, even as you do." He said, "We are like you." And he said, Please
do not be frightened." He asked Woody if he worked for a living. Woody told him he was a salesman. The man known as Cold said he was a searcher, although what he was searching for would not yet be evident. Before he left, Cold told Woody, "We will see you again." And with that, the spacecraft once again lowered onto the road. Cold got in, and off it went. For his part, Woody went home and spoke of the incident to his wife, who initially saw his pale complexion and thought he might have hit someone with the car. His wife became nervous that the incident might happen again, and she was not wrong. Woody and his family would later go on to claim that they were regularly visited by Cold, whose first name was revealed to be Indrid. Cold came from a planet called Lanulos, a peaceful place where there was no war or hostility. The people from Lanulos were evidently attempting to make contact with Earth, but were consistently being rebuffed. Cold even took Woody to his home planet via his spaceship. Woody would evidently be gone from his home for days, even weeks at a time. Sometimes he knew where he went, other times he couldn't remember.
What up, you ass-faced bitches? You stupid-ass honky f***ing
Well, hello, potty mouth.
When Woody died in 1990, his daughter Tanya claimed Indrid Cold attended the funeral. No one else in attendance realized that they were in the presence of the Grinning Man. Surely the account of Indrid Cold by Woody Derenberger got stranger, more far-fetched as it went along, and while plenty of people might be quick to dismiss Woody's stories, there were a handful of additional cases where a mysterious grinning man made an impact on people's lives. The Lilly family, living in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the home of the infamous Mothman sightings, experienced some very strange incidents in the late 60s. Weird lights, off-crafts hovering just outside the windows, screeching sounds from within the home. Perhaps the most notable incident happened to daughter Linda, who once awoke in her room to find a tall man standing over her bed. She said she couldn't see his face very well, but she could see that he was grinning at me. She recounted. The girl screamed and hid under the covers, later telling her mother that there was a man in her room, but that man was never seen again. Unlike many legendary creatures, the Grinning Man has kept a relatively low profile. There aren't a plethora of reports over the years detailing encounters with him, only a handful of incidents that bear only a small resemblance to the aforementioned sightings. A watchman in Italy is abducted by a tall figure with an egg-shaped head who is grinning from ear to ear. A woman in Connecticut driving home encounters a strange vehicle driven by a hideous creature with yellow eyes and a toothy smile. Such stories might be hard to swallow, but you can't deny that it leaves the tellers of the stories in a compromised position. Who would make up such a thing? And the big question, who was Indrid Cold, the Grinning Man? It wouldn't appear that he's here to hurt anyone. Perhaps he's just curious about us, as you'd expect a visitor from elsewhere to be. Those who believe in intergalactic police forces, specifically the infamous Men in Black, think perhaps Cold is a member of that unit here to monitor other beings from other worlds. Those UFOs seen in the night the boys encountered the Grinning Man? The Mothman incident in West Virginia, right where Woody Derenberger and the Lilly family had their startling meetings with Cold? Maybe he was here to look into those. Maybe Cold is a force for good, here to make sure our homes, our gatherings, are safe. If you find yourself in that position where you're forced to answer the question, what would I do if I were standing before an entity like Indrid Cold?
Answer the question!
Maybe instead of running in fear, you should stay and see what he wants. And make sure to offer him a smile. He's just like us, after all.
We'll keep looking for the answers, as long as you do too. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We plan to delve further into history's most important UFO incidents.
Army officers say the missile found sometime last week has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio for further inspection. Russia has